We're talking to a famous Charleston author. Stay tuned to Carolina People, coming up next. Good morning. Welcome to Carolina People. This morning we're in Charleston, South Carolina, at a famous shopping destination, Luton's. We're visiting with Richard Cote, the editor-in-chief of the Cote Literary Group. Richard, thanks so much for being with us this morning.
Good morning. It's a delight. Thank you.
Incredible opportunity to highlight yourself and a number of your works and to be able to focus on Charleston and so many activities all week going on here in Charleston.
It's a great honor.
Can you tell the viewers a little bit about yourself? Were you originally from the area?
I had the pleasure of adopting South Carolina in 1979. I was originally born in Connecticut. But I moved here in 1979 and to join the staff of the South Carolina Historical Society.
How did you become interested in conducting or getting active with the society there?
I had been conducting historical research and writing in Wisconsin, my previous residence, for a number of years. But my parents moved here in the 60s, and I came down, and after 3 visits, I fell in love with Charleston and the incredible richness of the history here.
Absolutely. It is unbelievable. And so much activity going on. Do you get out into the streets on a pretty regular basis and check out some of the activities going on, or are you just so dang busy writing and publishing that...
Well, it's writing historical books, which is my primary forte, requires a great deal of research. Some of that is done on site, but a great deal of it is done in libraries and archives, working with original documents. It's the historian's job to recreate as closely as possible what really happened at some particular point in time. And in order to do that, one has to throw out all the opinion, the hearsay, and some of the fiction writing that has gone on over the years, and get back to what people really wrote themselves, said themselves, or were personally observed saying or doing. So when I write my books, such as Mary's World or Theodosia, I throw out everything that has ever been written about these people, and I go back to what they said, because that's where you find the true history in the original writings of the people who you're writing about.
You garnered that the ability to do that during your tenure at the South Carolina Historical Society?
I had the pleasure of majoring in journalism and political science at Butler University in Indianapolis, Indiana. But I really did cut my teeth here in the Holy City, which is a bottomless pit, a wonderful place, for the most extraordinary place to be a historian, I think, on the planet.
You were published at the South Carolina Historical Society?
Yes, some of my early books were not books that you would pick up and read straight through as you would Mary's World or Theodosia. They were reference books written chiefly for librarians and other researchers. And 4 or 5 of my historical books are in heavy use by libraries, but you'd only want to use them if you're doing some specialized work.
Is there a primary reason that you left the Historical Society?
Well, it was actually with great regret, because I absolutely loved working in the fireproof building. The staff is fabulous. The resources are extraordinary. But I wanted to pursue my writing career. Fortunately, I was able to do to do both things. And I stayed basically on call for special projects. And one of those special projects led to my first major book here in Charleston.
What prompted you to write that first book? And I believe the book is Mary's World?
Mary's World, Love, War, and Family Ties in 19th Century Charleston. Yes, it was published in 2002, but that was after about 10 years of research and writing. And Mary's World came directly from about 165 letters that were written by a wealthy Charleston woman, Mary Maud Alston Pringle, and exchanged between Mary and her 13 adult children before, during, and after the Civil War. She was an extraordinary woman right in the middle of extraordinary times.
And the inspiration there, you said it was published in which year?
2000.
Okay, great. So it's just been out a couple of years. I think if you mention Mary's World in Charleston, there's probably not a head that wouldn't turn and say, I know that book, I've read that, or I know someone who's read it. Incredible.
Mary has made an extraordinarily large number of friends in the 21st century. The book is already in its 6th printing and has sold over 20,000 copies just in Charleston. And it's because Mary was intelligent. She gave herself a fantastic self-education because girls were only educated to about the 5th or 6th grade level. Mary made up for that by building a 5,000-volume personal library, giving herself an awesome education, and then passing that education on to her children. And they turned out to be a whole crop of Harvard scholars, Oxford scholars, a California Gold Rush pioneer, a French expatriate, 7 Confederate soldiers, a possible Union collaborator, most incredible family.
Golly, Richard.
And it was all written directly from Mary's own letters.
Right. So to go then into writing fiction, to go then into writing your second book, Redneck Riviera?
The Redneck Riviera, yes, sir.
What
possessed me is what all my scholarly friends ask me.
Sure.
Yes.
Why?
Well, first of all, I'm a Gemini, and everyone knows Geminis have 2 personalities. And that was, in my case, I absolutely am fascinated by historical research and writing, reconstructing someone's life just from dry paper. On the other hand, when you do this kind of writing, you can only write about that person, their times, their concerns, their problems. And I wanted to confront and deal with some of the problems of my own generation, which is to say the baby boomers. And also, Mary's World was a huge project. I collaborated with about 75 different people. It took almost 10 years to do the book. And by the time I was done, I just wanted to get my writer's brain back in that place where writing was pure, unadulterated fun again. And someone dropped the title of the book in my lap one day, and I ran home, spent 2 days outlining it, and 6 months later, voila.
Do you think you'll continue writing in this form, or do you think you'll ever go back to historical books?
I love both. It looks like I will be alternating between pure history and biography, like Theodosia and Mary's World, and novels such as the Redneck Riviera for some time. They're wonderful refreshers for each other.
You mentioned Theodosia.
Yes, sir.
What led you to do this third book, Theodosia? Anything in particular that inspired you?
Oh, absolutely. I actually met Theodosia. The Theodosia is Vice President Aaron Burr's amazing child prodigy daughter, a girl who by the age of 12 could read 7 languages and spoke 4, who entertained European royalty and Indian chiefs as a teenager in her father's home. And I met Theodosia while doing the research on my first book, Mary's World, because lo and behold, Theodosia Burr Alston and Mary Mott Alston Pringle were sisters-in-law. Oh, Theodosia married Mary's brother, Joseph Alston, who went on to become a governor of South Carolina.
Amazing. And you have a copy of Theodosia here with you?
Yes, sir.
Would you mind taking a second and possibly reading a little piece of it to the viewers, for viewers who may not have yet seen it? And it was published very recently.
Yes. Theodosia just came out on September 14th in 2002, and has become very popular. Aaron Burr was a twice disgraced man by the time that this little segment was written. He had fought a duel where he had killed Alexander Hamilton, and he had also been tried for treason but acquitted for his failed invasion of Mexico. He and his daughter were so close to each other that I refer to them as emotional Siamese twins joined at the heart. And he went after the failed invasion of Mexico. He scurried off to Europe to bury himself for 4 years, mostly to escape his creditors. And in disgrace and in total poverty, his daughter, who was still totally devoted to him, wrote to him on August 1st, 1809, a slender, delicate young woman with large, expressive dark brown eyes and dark auburn hair picked up her pen to profess her adoration for the man who was the center of her universe. Theodosia Burr Alston, who had just turned 26, wrote to her twice-disgraced father, Aaron Burr, I witness your extraordinary fortitude with new wonder at each misfortune. Often, after reflecting on this subject, you appear to me so superior, so elevated above all other men. You appear to that I contemplate you with such a strange mixture of humility, admiration, love, and pride, that very little superstition would be necessary to make me worship you as a superior being. My vanity would be greater if I had not been placed so near you, and yet my pride is in our relationship. I had rather not live than not be the daughter of such a man. It was the perfect match. Aaron Burr was Theodosia's god. Theodosia was Burr's prodigy and vision. They were far more than soulmates. Theodosia and her father were emotional Siamese twins who occupied separate bodies but shared a single heart.
Amazing, Richard. That's a great piece. And that was 1809.
1809.
What year was she, you said, when she would have penned that?
Theodosia was about 26 at the time.
Okay.
The great mystery, the great unsolved mystery about Theodosia is her disappearance at sea on December 31st, 1812, when she got on a ship for Georgetown, bound for New York finally for a reunion with her father, and disappeared without a trace.
Golly, that's amazing. And to know that is nonfiction, and to think about your ability to pen pieces like Redneck Riviera, to go from nonfiction
to fiction and back again.
and then back to nonfiction. How has that been? It must have been virtually schizophrenic. I mean, it's just tearing you up.
No, actually, they each are so refreshing. I love research. I'm absolutely married to research. I love finding out the true stories of what really happened to real people in real places and why they did it. On the other hand, that research is very dry. It's very insular. It's done in enclosed rooms or in libraries and archives. And I love, as a writer, I crave variety. Mm-hmm. And so 6 months after finishing Mary's World, I was up in Myrtle Beach during Bike Week among 50,000 Harley-Davidson owners wearing a hat that says, I'm writing a story about Myrtle Beach, tell me your story. Mm. And they did.
And they did, very definitely.
So it's a wonderful change of pace to me. It's like a refresher, a tonic between these huge projects.
Does anyone help you with the research, Richard? Is it just a one-man band, or do you have, I'm sure within the publishing group, have folks helping you out?
Yes. The wonderful thing about doing scholarly research on these large books, that is research-intensive books that take 3, 4, 5 years to write, is that you get involved with the fabulous other scholars who know much, much more than you do about certain areas that you'd love to know about. And the camaraderie that develops between fellow researchers and writers is just amazing. It's one of the most wonderful parts of the job for me, because I can share as a matter of fact, this book, Theodosia, is dedicated to Jim Mickey of Coastal Carolina University. The inscription reads, to Dr. James L. Mickey, a tireless archaeologist, brilliant scholar, and genial friend, without whose seminal research this story of Theodosia Burr Alston would have been woefully incomplete. Mm-hmm. He was an archaeologist. This man learned things about Theodosia that I could never learn.
Right.
But I had biographical information that helped him interpret the archaeological information. Oh, so we had this splendid interchange of ideas and information. And he was such an awesome man that I dedicated my book to Jim Mickey of Coastal Carolina.
This is someone who's truly inspired you.
Oh, he truly is. He typifies how scholars work together for the enrichment of the reader.
Are you currently working on a new project, Richard?
Yes, sir. Writers rarely run out of things to work on. I had a novel about halfway done when the Redneck Riviera sort of popped up out of nowhere. And it's a book called Beach Magic. And it's set in Beaufort, South Carolina. It's a work of fiction. It is a novel. There's not a word of history in it. And it's the story of a very intelligent, middle-class Beaufort woman who is obsessed with the use of psychics.
Yes.
And this is actually a very harmless pastime until your husband turns homicidal. Because psychics are notoriously unable to deal with real-world problems. Great on philosophy and long on action.
Keep our eyes peeled for beach magic.
Are
you frequently available for book signings or for appearances?
Yes, I have the pleasure of doing over 150 presentations about my books and public talks, discussions, and book signings all over the New England states. and the South. But chiefly in the Low Country, because here's where my heart lies.
Definitely, and the pieces sure are recognized there. If someone wanted to purchase a book, how would they go about finding them? This would be at large stores, small stores, all over?
Well, all of my books are published by Corinthian Books, and all Corinthian books are distributed nationwide and are available through any independent or chain bookstore or online at Amazon.com. Okay. So you would just go, if you're going to Amazon, you just go in and type in either my name, Richard Cote, C-O-T-E, or the title of the book, and it would be there. But any bookstore in the nation, even if they don't have it sitting on the shelf, and that's quite typical, can get any of our books in 2 days.
Richard, you mentioned real quick, not to go off of that, but you mentioned Dr. Mickey having been one of the folks that's really inspired you. Can you think of anyone else in particular, either from an early age or recently? We've got about a minute. Can you think of anyone that's really inspired you?
Dr. George C. Rogers, Jr. Has been my mentor and personal hero for many years. He was, until he passed away, the foremost historian in South Carolina. And he was one of my two chief manuscript readers for Mary's World. George was one of those giants in the field that if you could even hear him speak once, you've been blessed. And if you have the opportunity to work with him, it's just beyond imagination how much you can grow and learn from such an awesome man.
Richard Cote, you heard him speak of Mary's World, Redneck Riviera, Theodosia. You heard him also mention beach magic, the opportunity to experience beach magic. If you've been here the last 15 minutes, you've recognized a piece of that. Richard, thanks so much for being with us this morning.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure.
Definitely. Stay tuned for more Carolina People coming up next. Good morning. Welcome back to Carolina People. This morning we're at Luden's in Charleston. We're visiting with Anna Taylor Blythe of House and Garden Tour and Ghost Walk. Anna, thanks so much for being with us this morning.
Thank you for having me.
Very definitely, very definitely. Let's talk a little bit about yourself. Are you originally from the area?
I was born right down the street on Calhoun Street.
Is that
here
right?
In Charleston.
Here in Charleston, amazing.
Yes.
Are a heck of a lot of folks born in Charleston? I mean, if you're born in Charleston, do most folks stay here?
Unfortunately, now they don't.
They leave. They leave, and I'm sure quite a few of them probably come back. How far back can you trace your family's roots here in Charleston?
The first English settlers in 1670.
Is that right?
Yes.
Son of a gun. Do you have any family still here in the area?
I have a lot of cousins.
A lot, yes.
A lot of cousins. Charlestonians claim they're cousins even if it's only a 4th degree.
Do you have any children or grandchildren here
I
in the area?
have 3 children and 8 grandchildren.
Is that right? Are they all here in the Low Country?
They live in various places in the country.
Uh-huh. How do you, can you tell the viewers a little bit about your tour service?
Well, I've been giving tours for 10 years, and we have these 2 tours that I offer. The House and Garden Tour is Monday through Saturday, and the Ghost Walk is every night. The House and Garden Tour goes in a private home and 2 private gardens, and we see the beauty of Charleston.
Yes, very definitely. And what had you done before beginning to give these tours?
I was a legal secretary.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Obviously here in Charleston.
And I started giving tours by driving a mule team.
Is that right? By driving a mule team? Tell the viewers about that. What?
Well, for 6 years, I drove a carriage here in Charleston and gave tours for Palmetto Carriage.
Amazing. What about your service as a legal secretary before? Did that help tie in? I mean, was there any aspect of that made it easy to be a tour guide?
Not really.
Really?
No, but being a Charlestonian certainly helps, and having the connection with the people from history.
Yes.
My late husband came from many of the famous people in Charleston, and my sister-in-law, and some of my family were governors, and the people who made the history in Charleston. So it makes it very easy for me to know who they are and to be able to talk about them.
When did you first begin giving tours?
10 years ago.
Okay.
In driving for Palmetto.
Right.
And I have been giving the walking tours now for about 7 years.
How about the stories on the tours? Were you aware of the stories before actually providing them to large groups?
When I was growing up, I had a cousin who taught at the College of Charleston, Sam Stoney, who wrote many books in Charleston. He'd ride his bicycle and he'd come down the street and he would stop us teenagers and tell us these stories. We would say, oh, if he'd just leave us alone. Now I wish I could remember the things he told us. But we grew up with the history, and as a child I went off to camp down on Edisto Island, and we used to scare each other at night with the ghost stories.
Oh, I bet. Yeah.
Yes.
Have you ever taken the time to tape record or to
I've written up 30 of my stories in a book called Told to Me Stories, because people have told me the stories. And it's 30 little ghost stories, all in color, lovely little book.
Could people get a copy of the book?
Yes, it's at the Preservation Society and Historic Charleston Foundation.
Great, good. Did you add your own repertoire of stories?
I have added stories that people have given to me. I think every house in Charleston is haunted.
Every house in Charleston is haunted?
I think so. You just have to find the right person.
Viewers, you may never want to come to Charleston now, and all these houses haunted. Son of a gun. Where do the stories primarily come from, Anna?
From the people who live in the houses, or have lived in the houses.
All these haunted houses.
They just stop me on the street and say, oh, you've got to tell my story.
That's amazing.
And they've come from even an Episcopal minister, from older people, younger people, college students.
Right.
All sorts, everywhere.
Let's talk real quick about the garden tour. What would a viewer expect to see if they visited you in the garden tour?
Well, we were very fortunate here in Charleston to have all the early botanists come, and Andre Michaud brought many of the plants that we have today that we think belong to us from the Orient. Camellias and tea olives and ginkgos and mimosas and crepe myrtles. Charleston is a garden between two rivers, as someone once said. And we just have so much beauty and blossom all year long. And the fragrances, all year you have something that is giving off a fragrance.
I remember once, I guess about 4 or 5 years ago, coming down to see a private garden. There was a woman, Emily Whaley, here, who took off one night and left me at her home. She went out to Pinopolis and left me for an evening there, but I remember she had a very recognized garden here in Charleston. And
She certainly did, and my mother grew up with Ms. Whaley, and we were friends. One of her daughters went to camp with me when I learned those ghost stories. I did go in Ms. Whaley's garden, but now I'm in another private garden. And we go in a private home, and we're the only two that go in those. The house was built in 1849, and everyone who's lived in it has been related.
Is that right?
It's a very large house overlooking the waterfront, the Battery here in Charleston.
That's amazing. How do you select the home for the tour?
I'm very fortunate in being friends with the owner, and she has let me go. And, of course, insurance is a big thing with selecting a home.
What kind of history do you offer on the tour?
I offer Charleston in an entire different view from other people, because I show how Charleston got the look that we have by plants and by the people who have first built our buildings and then have saved them. If it weren't for groups like the Preservation Society and Historic Charleston Foundation, we wouldn't have the houses to tell about.
Which would be recognized as your most popular tour, probably?
Oh, the Ghost Walk, because it's so much fun, and it's for all children of all ages.
How about the stories that are told on the Ghost Walk? Could you give a flair, or we've got a little more than a minute, but just an idea of what some of the example stories would be? Maybe not to take away anything from the tour, of course, but the excitement to what's the normal when you're talking to somebody for the first time, the opportunity to learn about the Ghost Walk. Are there a handful of words that you provide to create the experience that someone would really want to take a tour?
Well, people ask why we have so many ghosts. And we say, where is there closer to heaven than Charleston? Why would you want to leave just because you died?
Listen to that. You heard it from Anna Taylor Blythe. Why would you want to leave just because you died? Anna, thanks so much for being on with us this morning.
Thank you so much.
Definitely. Stay tuned to more Carolina People coming up next. We want to thank the Butler family and all the staff here at Luden's for making Carolina People such a great success.